One of the major themes of this closed guard video is that there are certain vulnerabilities that my opponent can be exposed to anytime he's inside my closed guard. One of these is to take our opponent's hands and put them on the mat. If you can put your opponent's hands on the mat while you're in closed guard, you're going to find this is an excellent opportunity for you to get into another form of guard, the clamp. So, in a closed guard scenario, you have your legs locked around your opponent, and you'll notice that your opponent's two hands come down to the chest, and it forms something like a closed circuit, where the closer his hands are together, you get a closed circuit that goes from my opponent's shoulders, trapezius, scapula, upper back, down through the arms, and into the two hands that are close together. Okay? And this means that if I go to attack one of my opponent's arms, that closed circuit of strength makes it difficult for me to control my opponent. And often you get very, very strong resistance here. One of the best things that we can do anytime someone is here in our closed guard is to get hands down to the mat. So if I pull in with my legs and bring a hand down to the floor, I'm going to get opportunities to separate my opponent's two hands and get inside the two arms with my lower body, legs and hips. This means now my opponent's two arms are separated one from the other. When he tries to join his hands in this position, it's physically impossible. I'm literally between my opponent's two hands. And so that circuit of power and strength has been broken. I'm inside of it. And as a result, when my opponent tries to pull away from me, my left knee behind his shoulder makes it extremely difficult. When he tries to push forward into me, my right knee in front of his opposite shoulder makes it very difficult. So both forward and backwards motion is being restrained. When my opponent tries to use his hands in unison, it's physically impossible. They're kept apart. And as a result, from situations like this, we can go on the attack. We have control of distance through my pulling left leg and my pushing right leg. Now from here, if I just touch my foot to my own knee, we're going to have great opportunities to come around the corner and go into sankaku or triangle attacks from the bottom position. In addition, we're going to have great opportunities to go across our training partner's face with the leg and go into omoplata attacks from this position. And of course, as we take our opponent over to the side, we're going to have many opportunities to get a hold of our training partner's arm and attack with inverted jujigatami attacks and apply crushing arm locks here from bottom. Okay, so this is a fantastic way for us to go from a closed guard situation, which is proving unfruitful, and go into a clamp situation from where many kinds of submission hold can be easily attained, and you have excellent control of your opponent's body, and you control distance between his head and your head. So once again, from a situation where opponent has hands on, if he's just got hands on our chest, we just go inside and we pull in with our legs and we get his hands to the floor. If he actually has lapel grips from here, one useful way for us to work is to go through and take a figure 4 grip underneath our training partner's wrist and bring everything across, and the hand goes down to the mat. Why does it go down to the mat? Because I'm pulling in with my legs. Okay, if my legs are not active and I break the grips, the hands aren't going to go to the mat by magic. I have to incorporate, as always, my legs pulling, put the hands down on the floor. Now from here I go around the head, inside the bicep. We just shift our hips out to the side, and as a result, we can get to the clamp position. With a knee in front of the shoulder, it's hard for him to come forwards. With a knee behind the shoulder, it's hard for him to move away. Now, we regulate the distance of his head to our head, and by pushing with my knees, I can increase the distance. By pulling with my knees, I can shorten the distance. When it's time to attack, we typically push with the knees. Now I bring our foot to the opposite shoulder. It creates a hook from where it's quite easy for us now to go into our favorite attack from here, variations on the triangle. Okay. This is also an excellent opportunity for us to create even more distance and then bring our leg across our training partner's head and to go into variations of omoplata. And of course, there's also a great opportunity here for us to bring the head down, invert our body, and come around the corner into variations of jujigatami. So this is an incredibly practical way for us to go from a situation where closed guard is proving unfruitful and into a very powerful clamp guard. As my opponent goes to work, we focus on getting his hands down to the mat. The second the hand hits the ground, this is the perfect time for us to shift our body out to the side and start bringing knees in and controlling distance. Now from here, foot goes across. Probably everyone's favorite attack from here is going to be variations of Senkaku. As he goes to pull away from us now, we're in an excellent position now to lock up the figure of four and go into our strangles. If I see my opponent moving his head away from the Senkaku, it's only going to make it easier for me to go around the corner into omoplata. When he bases on a hand here, it's an easy thing for us to remove the hand and bring the head down to the mat and go into variations of omoplata. If for whatever reason we find we're somewhere in between the triangle and the omoplata, we can always invert our body, come around the corner, and find ourselves in an excellent position to attack inverted Judigatami arm locks. And so this is an excellent way for us to make that transition as long as our opponent's down on two knees into clamp guard out of close guard. Let's have a look at it from a different angle. Everything begins, two knees on the floor, and our ability to knee pull, get a hand down to the mat. Okay. Now we need angle. We can put a foot on the floor, that's okay. It's not the best way of doing things. We can put a foot on the hip, that's a little better. Or we can just shimmy our body out to the side. And then from here, our two knees pinch around the head and shoulders. When he goes to pull away from us, it just won't be easy under these circumstances. And it will be relatively easy for us to go into the various attacks that we've seen from bottom position. This is an excellent way to turn situations where you feel your opponent has done a good job of shutting down some of the more basic attacks from close guard and making the transition into a clamp from close guard and into your submission holds. Now, let's start looking at a position which I coach constantly to my students. This position I often refer to as the clamp. It is an incredible avenue into upper body submissions anytime you're working from bottom position. It can be done from open guard and it can be done from close guard. Obviously, in the context of this video, we're looking at it from close guard. We've already seen how to enter into the clamp. Now let's start to look at some of the mechanical details behind it, the reasoning behind the position, and the attacking opportunities we gain from it. First, let's understand something, that the clamp derives its power from the principle of isolation. It enables us to isolate one of our opponent's arms away from the other. In a more precise way of looking at it, you would say it isolates a head and one arm. It prevents your opponent from joining his two arms together. Always understand that in most upper body attack defense, the basis of defense is your opponent locking his two arms together. So if you can isolate one arm away from the other, it's going to make it much more difficult for your opponent to defend himself from the various forms of attack that you're hoping to employ. Understand also that the clamp functions on the upper body in a very similar way that the ashigarami works on the lower body. If we have an opponent on one knee, you'll see that ashigarami, an attack we'll be looking at a lot when we work from open guard, functions where we have one knee in front of our training partner's hip and a knee here on the outside of the hip, usually backed up by a foot. This means that if my opponent goes to push into me, my left knee will be a barrier. As he comes forward, it's the left knee which creates problems. When he goes to pull away, it's the right knee behind his knee, which makes it difficult. So when my opponent tries to come forward, my inside leg makes it very difficult. When he tries to pull away from me, my outside leg makes it difficult. And so movement both forwards and backwards is greatly curtailed. The clamp functions in a very similar way on the upper body, where one knee prevents my opponent from moving away and one knee prevents him from moving forward. The inside knee prevents Kyle from moving into me. The outside knee prevents him from moving away. And it means that I control the distance between Kyle's head and my head. And we can use that to create angles of attack which enable us to go into all manner of upper body submissions. So it's an incredibly impressive way to control distance between you and your opponent and at the same time control angle. When you have the clamp, you have an ability to form a side-on body position to your opponent. It's very difficult for him to recover from that side-on body position because of the fact your two knees are locked around the head and arm in this fashion. It also means when your opponent tries to lock his hands together defensively, it's physically impossible. One hand simply can't access the other, as opposed to a closed guard situation here where one hand can always access the other. So anytime we get the chance to put an opponent's hand on the floor and enter into the clamp, that's going to make for fine attacking opportunities. Now, an obvious question for you to ask is, okay, sounds good. What are the attacking opportunities? Let's run through them now. Okay, there's no question in my mind that my favorite method of attacking from the clamp is always to go into variations of the triangle. So when we have an opponent here in our closed guard, we get the inside position with our hands and pull him forward and get his hands in that vulnerable position down on the floor, I'm always looking to shoot my hips out to the side and then go right away into the clamp. Once we get the clamp, the top leg goes over the top and forms a hook over my training partner's shoulder. That hook enables me to extract the bottom leg. So I pull with my foot on top of the shoulder. I don't just have my foot here on his upper back. Now there's no ability to pull my bottom leg out. I use my foot as a hook right in there. And now it's very easy for me to extract the bottom leg. It goes over the top, and now we lock up a quick trap triangle. A common problem here, especially once you've hit the move successfully a few times, is your opponent will try to grab your knee to prevent you from pommeling your leg into the trap triangle. If we ever see this kind of thing going on, and my opponent goes here to grab a hold of my knee, I will simply grab all 4 fingers. Remember, the sport of jiu-jitsu does not allow us to start grabbing individual fingers and peeling individual fingers. That is illegal. Your training partner certainly won't appreciate that kind of behavior. But it is fully legal to grab the knuckle line, all 4 knuckles at the same time. This does an excellent job of peeling our opponent's hand off the leg and enabling us to go right back into the triangle that we were looking for. Once we get a hold of the triangle, we get the trap triangle here, our feet locked, we get a hold of our own shin, or conversely, your opponent's head. They're both great options. And then from here, we start turning out to an angle and focusing on getting our legs and hips out so we can lock the figure of 4 over our training partner and go into a strong finishing position. So once again, we start off in a closed guard situation. We bring our hands inside, we pull in and get his hands down to the mat. Hands on the mat is a tremendous vulnerability inside a closed guard. We control the head, the bicep, and we start the action of turning our body out to the side. Then we bring our knees through and lock up. Okay, I can have my hand open. I can physically hold onto my opponent's hand at the wrist, your choice. The main thing is we hook inside the clavicles so we can bring our legs through and lock up our feet like so. Now, most of the time from here, I like to just go straight to the shin, put my foot on the hip, and start a turning action out to the side. Very often, we'll assist with an arm so we can get a better angle and start moving our leg out all the way like so. Then from here, it's a relatively easy thing to lock the figure of 4 and go into a very strong stranglehold with our legs. So that's an obvious first attack from the clamp position. Okay. Another excellent attack out of here is Juji Gatami, the armbar, but it's going to be done a little different. Some variations we'll look at now. Off the previous move, we saw the idea of sliding out to the side and locking up like so. From here, we place our foot on the top of our training partner's clavicle, we extract the bottom leg, and we lock up the trap triangle. From the trap triangle, as my opponent tries to pull away from me, I'm going to put a hand right here on my training partner's elbow. And we're going to go into a particularly nasty form of arm lock, often described as tegatame, or the hand lock. I put my foot on my training partner's lat muscle and arch up to the ceiling for a very strong finish. Alternatively, under these circumstances, we can lock the figure of 4, that same triangle we just looked at, and then from here I cover his wrist with my elbow as he tries to pull away from me. We just arch up and we get a very strong lock. Alternatively, we can bring the hand across to the chest, and right there from the triangle situation, bring the hand down across the hip and get a powerful finish. Alternatively, we can switch to a 3/4 Juji Gatami, and from here, also get a powerful arm lock finish. So once again, starting off here, we bring the hands to the mat. Like all the other times, we shift our hips out and go directly into the clamp. We lock up our training partner at the clavicle, bring the legs through, and lock our feet. A first alternative here is to hold the elbow physically here in our hand, place a foot on our training partner's lat muscle, and then hip in for a strong tegatame attack. Alternatively, we can lock the figure of 4 and perform a similar attack, Juji Gatami, straight from the triangle itself. Another nice alternative under these circumstances, as we get that initial triangle, is to bring the hands across to our chest and then apply Judigatami in a more conventional fashion. We can also bring the legs over the top for a strong 3/4 Judigatami and finish like so. Now, these are Judikatamis where our chest is facing the ceiling. That's not the only way of doing it. A superb way of doing it is to turn belly down towards the floor and get a particularly strong version of Judigatami, the armbar. Again, working from the clamp, we bring the hands to the floor. We shift our hips out to the side. I put my hand here on my training partner's elbow. I pull my own elbow in and I put my foot down on the mat. And as a result, we can quickly invert. I focus on taking my knee in towards his elbow and we hit a particularly strong version of Judigatami down here for the finish. So my shin goes on the back of the neck, elbow on the floor, and hip in for a strong finish. So once again, we start off and into the clamp we go. Strong body. From here, we hip out and lock in place. I get a hold of my training partner's elbow joint. My foot goes over the top. Bottom foot now goes on the floor. I put the ball of my foot on the mat like so. And as a result, I can invert my knee and go upside down. From here, my elbow goes to the floor. My elbow comes in close here to my own lat muscle. And then we hip forward for a particularly strong version of Judigatami. A strong arm lock finish. This too provides a very practical and effective way to get arm breaking pressure on your opponent out of the clamp. So we've looked at triangle and Judigatami arm bars. Let's look now at another fine alternative, the Kimura. Also much easier to perform from the clamp than it is from a closed guard. We have an opponent here in our closed guard. Conventionally, to go into Kimura, we have to be able to trap our training partner's wrist, sit up, and it's not easy. Okay? From a situation that your opponent can lock his hands behind your back, cause all kinds of problems. Yeah. But when we work from the clamp, we get an isolated arm. Okay. From that isolated arm, I'm just going to control distance by touching the clavicle on the far side, and then we start to look for wrist control. Now, your opponent's elbow is right on the fulcrum of your hip. So even when he makes a strong resistant arm here, it's an easy thing for us to use our knee to push in one direction and our hand to push in the other and expose that wrist. This creates a superb attacking angle where we can lock not just a Kimura, but a Kimura with an immensely tight lock over the top like so. Okay? When he goes to peel out, roll out, all those things that people like to do, it's just so difficult. Our intention here is always to bring our opponent's elbow to our armpit. So I bring the elbow to the armpit to massively increase the amount of pressure that we can bring to bear. It's always a good idea under these circumstances to put our opponent's hand inside our own leg and create an even stronger lock. Okay? This is good where we are here, but if I can ever take my leg on the inside, we create a much stronger finishing pressure. So once again, from a clamp type situation, we bring our opponent's hands to the mat. That's always the signal that the clamp will be a fine method of attacking. From here, we shoot our hips out and lock the clamp. We touch and create such a strong angle as we look into our training partner's ear that it's relatively easy to seize the wrist and create the advantageous angle in the arm that we're looking for. Now we go through and lock. As we get the figure of 4, we bring everything inside our own leg and we bring his elbow to our armpit. That takes all the slack out of our training partner's arm and creates a very, very strong breaking pressure. Alternatively, we can go back to the security of the trap triangle that we saw earlier. Again, we get hands on the floor, shift our hips out, and like before, go through into the trap triangle. Using that same angle that we've looked at, we get a hold of our training partner's wrist and lock up the figure of 4. When he goes to peel out of this, it's so difficult. He's head locked up in a trap triangle. It's so hard now to prevent us bringing the elbow all the way up to the armpit and getting the hand inside the thigh, and as a result, tremendous breaking pressure. So once again, he's got hands on top, and from here we go inside and get the hands down to the floor. That's the precursor always to going forward into the clamp. Once we get to the clamp, top foot extracts bottom foot, and there we have the trap triangle. By elevating our pelvis, we expose the wrist and create a situation where it's not so difficult for us to go through and lock up the figure of 4. Now we bring the elbow to our armpit. We bring the hand inside the thigh, and as a result, we get tremendous breaking pressure. Okay? So this too is an excellent way for us to attack out of clamp position. Now, one of my personal favorite ways of attacking out of clamp is an arm bar, which perhaps should be used a little more than it is. This is udigatami, with a reverse arm lock, where my opponent's arm starts in a straightened state, and we put pressure on the elbow and, to take it into hyperextension. This is an easy move to hit out of the clamp, and a highly effective one. It also leads very well into other submissions. So, once again, we're working from a closed guard type situation. We get our opponent's hands down to the mat. From here, we've seen that once we get into the clamp, we're looking like a good angle. We've got angle on our opponent. We've got distance control. This is a fine time for us to go on the attack. We're going to put a hand on our training partner's elbow and swim our second arm underneath and take his wrist all the way up to our clavicle and collarbone, just like so. Okay? I'm going to take my elbow to his elbow. I'm going to reinforce that with my own hand on my own elbow, just like so. And then from this position, I'm going to reposition my knee right there in front of my training partner's shoulder, like so. Here's a little detail. I like to take my foot and put it in my training partner's far armpit. That gives me an extraordinary ability to move my hips away from my opponent while my head goes towards him. So often I see talented athletes get this position and lack the ability to finish because they simply pressure down on their opponent's elbow. Even worse, you see them doing so with loose grips, like so, which are very easy for my opponent to rotate his elbow and avoid the pressure. So what we want is elbow, hand reinforces, and then from here I move my hips away from him and my head towards him. And as a result, we're able to get severe breaking pressure. The reason I'm able to move my hips away is because my shoelaces are right there in the armpit and tricep on the far side. And as a result, we can quickly generate tremendous breaking pressure from this position. The beauty of this move is the only way my opponent can really avoid it is to bring his head up and away from the floor, which greatly facilitates the entry right back into all those horrible elements we saw earlier, the trap triangle, looking into strangleholds, going into subsequent arm locks, etc., etc. So it creates this incredible cycle of misery for your training partner as you take their head in these various directions into submissions. So once again, we have an upper body grip on the part of our opponent. We get his hands on the floor. Hands on the floor is always a signal that the clamp is going to be pretty easy for us to get into. First thing, trap the arm, pommel our arm through to an underhook position, and then control the elbow joint. My shoelaces go to the far armpit, make a strong body, buddy. We lock up on the elbow, and we start moving our hips away and our head towards them. And as a result, we get very strong breaking pressure. It's very important that I be precise and find the elbow joint itself, and as a result, we get a very strong attack. My opponent's only real escape is to bring the head up like so and try and relieve pressure and turn his elbow inside my grip. But as he does that, he always makes himself vulnerable to follow-up attacks using Senkaku, the triangle. Another option my opponent has when we work from this position is to try and rotate his elbow further forward than I wanted it to go. And as a result, I start to lose breaking pressure. Whenever we see that, we simply push away with our hips, and now we have the wrist right there in front of our chest. This gives us a great opportunity to take our hand to his elbow, put my bottom foot on the mat, and rotate faster than our training partner rotates. And as a result, we can turn udigatami into judigatami and get very strong breaks. So once again, we start off here in a closed guard. We get his hands to the mat. As a result, it's an easy thing for us to convert closed guard into the clamp. The clamp represents the single most effective method of isolating one arm from the other as long as our opponent's on two knees. Then from here, we pommel through and lock up an initial udigatami, which is often a very successful form of attack. If the head rises, we shift to triangles. If the head lowers, we push the wrist on by and go in and control our training partner's elbow. I rotate around his shoulder girdle and find myself in the perfect position now to switch off from udigatami to jujigatami, and as a result, a strong break. Now, not only do we have these very useful attacks of our arms against our opponent's arms, but we also have attacks featuring our legs against our opponent's arms. So, for example, if we're here working from clamp position, and we bring our opponent's hands down to the floor. My knees come out, and we control our training partner. Sometimes it can feel difficult to get our opponent's arm into a position where we can straighten it and get our attacks on. It can be difficult sometimes to get to the Kimura locks we're looking for. Under these circumstances, an excellent form of attack for us is always to pommel our foot through and across in front of our training partner and start to threaten variations of omoplata. Now, omoplata is a massive topic in itself. I'd love to cover that one day. But let's just look at just the fundamentals here of attacking from here. The main thing is the contesting of our opponent's head position versus our head position. Once we get into the omoplata position, it's all about whose head is going higher. I want his head going down, and I want my own head going up. He knows that, so of course we tend to get into a battle here where he's fighting to bring his head up and keep my head down towards the floor. And you can often get into a disappointing battle here where you come around the corner, you're trying to set up, he's bringing his head up, and the more his head goes up, the more my head tends to go down. So what we want to do is make sure his head goes down first, okay? The way we're going to do that is hold on to our training partner's sleeve, just like so. If we're working without a gi, you can use a hand on the elbow on either side. And then from this position, rather than just lock up a triangle and try to hold our opponent down, we're going to use our leg to stretch straight and first bring the head down. Once the head goes down, we use our second leg as a pendulum to come up. Now, if I stay too close to my opponent, and I'm in hip to hip on my opponent, when his head rises, my head will go down. So it's very important, once we bring our training partner's head down and put weight on him, the first thing here is always to get our hips further away from our opponent. The further my hips go away from my opponent, the more successful I'm going to be. The more we're in here hip to hip, his head rises and my head goes down. So we're always looking under these circumstances to create an initial movement away from our training partner. Okay, so under here, I normally scoot away first and then bring the legs in. Now when my opponent goes to bring the head up, it's significantly more difficult. We're going to go through and lock underneath our training partner's far arm. Just sitting up, buddy. I'm grabbing here at the lapel. Alternatively, we can get a hold of our training partner's far wrist, or you can just hug the upper body if those feel like they're out of range for you. Now from this position, I always want to cover my training partner's elbow. So I physically push the elbow down and cover it with my shin. And as a result, I'm able now to drive forward. No need to lock the triangle from here. We just drive across our training partner's body. I don't go forward where there's no pressure. I go across the shoulder line. My personal favorite grip here is to lock the wrist or to go through and lock my hands, okay? Regardless of which one you do, the whole idea is to go across the shoulder line. That's what creates the strongest Kimura pressure. Many people make the mistake of going forward. I can go forward all the way to my knee and nothing will happen. What makes the pressure happen is my knee coming up to the line of his shoulders and my whole body going across his shoulder line. Let's never go forwards. That's not the idea. If I align myself with the center line, I can go forward as far as I want and nothing will happen. But the second I turn across the body, we start getting strong braking pressure. Okay, thank you. Used in this fashion, we can take one position, the clamp, easily available anytime my opponent's hands touch the mat, and transform a neutral closed guard situation into a devastating position from where a wealth of upper body submissions are easily available. It creates an unfair advantage for you insofar as you now completely govern the distance between your head and your opponent's head. He can't go forward and backwards. He can't change the angle that you've gained upon him. And as a result, almost all of the major upper body submissions in Jiu-Jitsu immediately become available to you and are twice as difficult for your opponent to defend for the simple reason that he cannot lock one hand to the other. And so the primary defense to all the major upper body submissions is taken away from him before you've even begun them. In this sense, this represents one of the absolute best and most effective methods to isolate an arm from guard position and get on the attack. All of my students are extremely adept in the use of clamps because we're
kind of known for our lower body submissions in competition, and they tend to work extremely well. You don't often see our students using the clamp in competition. Not many people are comfortable coming into our guards. But when we grapple each other in the gym, and we are comfortable going into each other's guards, we're not so afraid of each other's leg locks, we go in and engage, the clamp is one of the most common guard positions we make use of. And its effectiveness has been very, very impressive over the years.
Now, our general project here is to give you guys a strong close guard based around the idea of breaking your opponent's posture down and getting some kind of advantage over your opponent prior to launching your attacks. We know that there are certain vulnerabilities that our opponent can be exposed to inside a closed guard. We're always constantly looking to get our opponent's elbow across the center line, his hands down to the mat, his head below his hips, etc., etc. One of the great vulnerabilities we can expose our opponent to, and one of the best ways of gaining some kind of tactical and mechanical advantage prior to attacking, is an inside wrist grip. Let's look now at the fine details behind this movement. Okay, first off, what is an inside wrist grip? That's where we take one of our hands with our palm facing up, like so, and we get a hold of one of our training partner's wrists. And from here, I use my hand bent back 90 degrees to get my thumb higher than his thumb. If my thumb joint, the joint of the thumb, is lower than his, this is not an effective grip. The intention of an inside wrist grip is to take our opponent's hand away from our torso and keep it locked out here so that space develops between his hand and his torso. Okay? If my thumb, in particular, the main joint of the thumb, is lower than his, it's not an effective grip. He can easily bring his hand back to my chest, and make the grip useless. So the whole idea is for me to bend my hand and extend my arm in such a way that my thumb joint is higher than his thumb joint. Now when he tries to take my hand back to his own hand back to my chest, it's physically impossible for him. There's no way to get through there. This is an incredible way of locking an opponent's arm out in a vulnerable position, extended out and away from the body. Okay? Now, this has to be done at the same time as a breaking of my opponent's posture. If my opponent's posture is strong, the inside grip is not that useful. My opponent can bring his hand back to himself and then back to my chest. So we can go in two directions to get the hand back. So what we want to do in these situations is to get our opponent's body broken forward. And as a result, we can control our training partner's head. From situations like this, we can start to shift our hips out and get some kind of angle on our training partner. It's from situations like this, where I'm on my side rather than flat on my back, where inside wrist gripping takes place. Because my top arm controls my training partner's head. When he tries to posture up and away, it's a difficult thing. You've got excellent control of the head. And at any given moment, we can take our hand and apply the inside wrist grip. Now, when he tries to take his hand back towards my chest, it's physically impossible. We get that good hand position and we're ready to go. Okay? If my opponent tries to move his hand, the only direction he can move it is out and away from me. And that only compounds the problem for him. The more he moves the hand back in this direction, the more vulnerable he becomes to the subsequent moves we'll be looking at. The direction he wants to take his hand is back towards my torso, so he can start to establish inside position, flatten me out, looking this way, and put me flat on my back. And then he can start standing up and opening my guard, getting his posture, all those things that will enable him to recover. Okay? Always understand, if you have your hands on the inside position, always my opponent wants me flat on my two shoulders, like so, and lined up. That's where he has the best chance of standing up to his feet and opening my closed guard. So we always want to get situations where we start breaking people down and we start to form advantageous angles on opponents out to the side. And then we get this inside wrist grip. We get our thumb higher than his thumb. When he tries to return his hand in and get the inside position, it's impossible. Our hand is literally between his hand and the inside position he seeks. And as a result, from here, we're going to be able to go on the attack. As he tries to posture up and away from us, we have just enough control of our training partner that from here we can get our foot inside our training partner's bicep and lock up. As soon as we get there, we get a hold of our own shin. At this point, there's no sense in holding on to the hand. It's done its work. Don't hold on after something has become useless to you. So we just release it, okay? From here, when he goes to yank away from us, it's a difficult thing to do. And we've got the beginnings of our attack. Here, we go into a trap triangle. The trap triangle is essentially a closed guard locked around your opponent's head and one arm. The beauty of the trap triangle is that it creates a situation where the lock of our feet is at the end of the lever behind my opponent's head. So as I pinch my knees together and my training partner goes to posture up and away, the knee pull from here is incredibly effective and incredibly controlling. Much more so than a knee pull down here at my opponent's lower back. Always remember, the higher the lock of your feet, the more devastating your knee pull will be. Okay, so the sequence as a whole is always to get inside our opponent's arms and use a knee pull to get him down into a broken down posture. Then we go through and control the head, and we start looking for advantageous angle, always looking to shift our hips out to the greatest degree possible. When we go to relock our guard, you'll see now that we have quite an advantageous angle out to the side. Controlling our training partner's head when he goes to recover posture, that's going to give us opportunities to access the wrist and get the inside wrist grip. The key feature of the inside wrist is that the main joint of my thumb is higher than the main joint of his thumb. So when he tries to get back to the inside position, he's completely locked out. It's almost impossible for him to recover. Now from here, we take our foot through underneath and pass it. And we get through to the shin. As our opponent goes to posture up and away, we're going to get great opportunities now to lock the trap triangle, a closed guard around the head and one arm rather than around my opponent's waist and torso. Knee pulls from this position are absolutely devastating. Even if my opponent goes to stand up to his feet now and try and pull me up off the mat, it's a difficult thing because we've just got so much pull at the end of the lever behind our opponent's head and shoulders. Now from here, the main attack we always work with, of course, is going to be Senkaku, the triangle. The key elements that we always work with are the idea of controlling either the shin or the back of our training partner's head, and then a good turn around the corner that puts my knee behind his head. When he goes to posture up and away from us, it's a difficult thing because of that knee position behind the head. Now from here, we lock up the figure of four, and we've got a very strong triangle stranglehold for the finish. So once again, we start off, as we so often do here, getting control of our training partner, and we start to bring his posture forward with a knee pull. Once we get our hands inside our training partner's body, we go through and we control the head, just like so. Now we need angle, so we start shimmying our body out to the side. When we relock our guard now, it's locked over to one side of the body rather than behind his spine. That shows very clearly we've successfully gained some kind of advantageous angle upon our opponent. Now we start coming out, my head moves away from his head, and now we're in a good position to get a hold of our training partner's wrist. We make sure always that our thumb takes a high position. So when Mateus tries to bring his hand back to the inside, it's physically impossible. Now I bring my foot inside and over my training partner's bicep. Once we get to this position, we lock onto the shin and we lock our feet. When he goes to posture up and away from us, it's a very difficult thing indeed. Most of your opponents here will be looking to stand up to their feet in order to move away from triangles. We know now that if we see this kind of thing, it's not so difficult for us to begin a turning action that puts our knee in behind the back of our training partner's head. This creates a very, very strong control of the end of the lever. When he tries to posture up and away from the triangle, won't be easy under these circumstances. And the lock of the triangle here is a particularly tight one. Seen from another angle, we have a closed guard situation. From here, always the initial breakdown that destroys our training partner's posture. We go through and control the head, and we're always looking to get some kind of advantageous angle, moving out further and further, so that when we lock our feet, they lock over one side of his body. When he tries to posture up from here, it won't be easy because of my knee position behind his head. Now we snatch the inside wrist grip as he tries to posture up and away. It's not a simple thing for our opponent to prevent us going through and transferring into the trap triangle. Trap triangle is even stronger than a top lock when it comes to controlling the end of the lever, the top of your opponent's spine. It's an incredibly effective place in which to operate. If our opponent elects to stay on his two knees, it's an easy thing for us now just to lock the figure of 4 and look for our finishes. Most of your opponents will be looking to stand up on you. That's fine from situations like this. It's not that difficult for us to make good turns around the corner and lock up the figure of 4 for a strong finish. Now, let's make some additional points about gaining that initial inside wrist position. So far, we've been breaking our opponent down to get hands to the mat. That's a fine way to get to the inside wrist. It works extremely well, but it's not the only way. Let's start looking now at 2-on-1 wrist grips. From a situation where we have a closed guard, very often my opponent will be looking to gather up my 2 lapels and perhaps get to a sleeve grip or what have you, okay? These are circumstances where we can apply an inside wrist. I go underneath my training partner's forward hand and I grip right in here at the wrist. Even as he makes strong grips from here, we always want to pommel our hand around the corner. As a result, we can break grips quite easily. So once again, he gets a good wrist grip. I don't just try to pull here. It's not an easy thing to do. I go under and pommel my hand around his hand so that when we push and pull, we break grips quite easily. Now we've got 2-on-1. We pull him forward and force the hand outwards. And lo and behold, we're right now into our inside wrist grip. When he tries to pull away from us, we go through and control the head. We've got the excellent attacking position we're looking for. We shift our hips out and lock. As he goes to pull away from us, you have control of the head, and it won't be easy for him to prevent getting into our favorite initial lock, the trap triangle. Now we just pinch our knees together as he goes up and away from us. There's so many ways we can go on the attack. Okay, obviously triangles are one great option. Another fine option here are 3/4 jujigatami's. We pass 2 legs over the head and shoulders, and from here we have fine armbar opportunities. Okay, so we've got 2 nice ways to get to an inside wrist. We've seen the idea that we can bring hands to the floor, control the head, shift, and off that angular advantage, we can go through and snatch the inside wrist. Once we get inside wrist, it's not that hard for us to start going through into triangles. Then we saw the idea that when he gets conventional grips on us, we go under one hand and feed through. Off that pommel, we break grips and get 2-on-1. Even as he makes a strong posture now, we knee pull and bring our training partner forward, and now we're into our favorite grip. When he tries to bring the hand back in, it's not an easy thing to do. As always from here, we're always looking to get that initial advantageous angle, which facilitates the passing of the leg over the top of the bicep and initially right into a trap triangle. From here, when he goes to pull away, move out, etc., it's not an easy thing. Trap triangle is an incredibly impressive position from where to make a transfer to a full figure 4 triangle and go into the finish. So these are some practical and common sense ways to get to that inside wrist position. Always remember, just sitting in front of me, Benny. Anytime we get a hand on the inside, make sure always your hand bends back at 90 degrees so that your thumb has the top position. If your hand is straight, like so, your thumb will be underneath his. He will be able to take his hand and touch your chest and easily get back to an inside position. So our whole thing is to get the wrist bent backwards. Now with our thumb in top position, when he tries to touch our chest, it's almost impossible. It's like he's been put in an American lock. And then when he tries to come back with the hand, it's like he's armbarring himself. It's a difficult thing to work through. So always we're looking in these situations to go through and take inside wrist. Okay, anytime we're working from guard and we're chest to chest, inside wrist is an incredibly valuable way to get our opponent's arm into an extended position. A general rule of thumb in jiu-jitsu is the further the hand from the torso, the weaker that limb becomes, and the more manipulable that limb becomes. So always, this inside wrist position is something we're constantly fighting for out of closed guard scenarios. If I get a hold of my training partner and pop a grip off, there's the inside wrist every single time. This is another excellent way to go into it. My opponent locks up. From here, look how we just get 2-on-1 and we pop the grip. I don't push back into my opponent, make a strong grip. Rather, we take everything up and overhead. And as a result, we're straight away into an inside wrist. Now, when he tries to recover the position, it's so difficult from situations like this. My feet locked on this side of the body make for an advantageous angle and then a quick transition into a trap triangle. From the trap triangle, so many ways for us to go. We've got great armbar opportunities, great stranglehold opportunities, courtesy of the triangle itself. It's just a fantastic attacking instrument. So once again, for a closed guard scenario, anytime we can get a hold of a wrist and then from here bring our hand into the inside wrist position, you're going to have a great ability now to attack from situations like this. As your opponent fights to get the hand back inside, it's such an easy thing for us to pass our foot through and into a win. Okay, some things to bear in mind when people see this move demonstrated. So often I hear people say, oh, you need some kind of crazy flexibility to hit that move, to get the foot inside the bicep. Am I capable of doing this? Absolutely. I'm a 53-year-old man with a crippled leg and a hip replacement. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. Let's have a look at the small details that are going to enable you to work with the inside wrist grip and get that foot inside regardless of your age and your flexibility. Okay? We've got to create the illusion of flexibility here. I'm not a flexible person, but I can easily get my foot inside the bicep every time. How? From a situation where I break my training partner down to the mat, the key is to understand I never operate flat on my back. That's going to make very, very difficult thing to get your foot inside. Okay? That would require truly extraordinary flexibility. You'd have to be able to do a full side split combined with kind of a lotus position at the same time in order to get your foot inside. What makes it possible is the fact that you shift onto one side. The second thing that makes it possible is the movement of my head away from his head. If my head is too close to his, that takes a lot of flexibility to get my foot inside. So as I push away on his wrist, I move my head away from his head. As a result, my foot goes through relatively easily, and then we lock up. So once again, we have an opponent here in front of us. Look how initially we bring our body into a position where we move out to the side. The more we get onto our side and face down, the easier it becomes to work our body into a winning position. Look, I bring my bottom foot through, and now we're into a trap triangle. Some other details that'll help you out in this position. Once we get our opponent's body broken down here, and we start that action of shifting and turning and moving out to the side, it's very, very useful under these circumstances to make your chest face downwards. The more my chest faces upwards, the more flexibility I need to get my foot inside. So what we'll often do in these circumstances is go here, face down. So not all the way face down, but my chest facing slightly down to the floor. As my training partner goes to recover and bring the head back up, that's exactly when the foot passes through. And as a result, we get to a nice winning situation. A little confidence booster here for you. Your hands and feet are always set up in ways where you can touch your hands and feet together, regardless of your age and flexibility level. It's just not a difficult thing to do. Understand that when you're in the inside wrist position, that's essentially what you do. You have your hand here and your foot touches your own hand. It's not a difficult thing for anyone, regardless of age or flexibility level, to do this. Okay? It's not asking a lot. So we have an opponent here on top of us. We break him down to the side. We shift our hips out. And look how from situations like this, it's not a difficult thing for me to get my hand and foot close together. If you can touch your hand and foot, you can always bring your leg to the inside position and lock up your trap triangle. So one last time. We're here with a training partner. He's got standard grips working like so, and we can see here that if we can pop the grips off and get our opponent broken down towards the mat, control our training partner's head, and then shift our hips out to the side and start facing downwards as he tries to bring the hand back into the chest, it won't be an easy thing for him to do. Okay? As my foot comes up high on the back, we go through and we lock up a nice trap triangle. One last word to the wise with regards to this move and flexibility. I often find it's a big help for the less flexible people to use the other leg to assist you getting your primary leg inside the bicep. What does this mean? We demonstrate from this angle. Okay, we break our training partner down and we get the inside wrist position. As we shift out to the side, if I just try to bring my lower leg through, it can feel difficult, okay? Even for flexible people. But if I use my top leg come up on my training partner's back, I can use that to push my lower legs through. So if my top leg doesn't do any work, all the work goes on my bottom leg. It's hard. So I take my top leg and I use that to carry and lift my hips so that the bottom leg becomes very soft and flexible. And as a result, we pass through quite easily. One more time, using both legs. We go through, break an opponent down to the mat and lock on board. As he tries to bring his hand back to the chest, the inside wrist position locks him out. We shift our hips out. And as a result, we can lock up. Now from here, I start bringing this foot here as a lifting mechanism so that I can lift my lower leg into a winning position. Once he tries to pull away from this, it's not an easy thing to do. So many forms of attack out of this position that we can rely on for good results. In this way, we can create very, very strong attacks indeed. Out of inside wrist, the triangle, and variations off that triangle, arm bars, omoplatas, monoplatas, etc., become very, very useful forms of attack. It's a great way to get strong mechanical and tactical advantage prior to launching your attacks out of closed guard positions.
Now, you'll remember that earlier in the video, we talked about the 6 main vulnerabilities that an opponent can fall into when he's inside your closed guard. The idea was that if we could push our opponent into one of these vulnerabilities, the various attacks that we favor are a lot easier for us to work with. One of those vulnerabilities was what we often refer to as the second step. When your opponent goes to stand up in your closed guard, in the vast majority of cases, they step one leg first, then the other. When they go to take that second step, the big side-to-side movement of their head makes it relatively easy to off-balance them for that critical moment and take them up and over. I want to look now at a form of sweep, often referred to as an overhead sweep, which we can use to take advantage of this critical second step. This is a sweep which is used to great effect in jiu-jitsu competition by a great jiu-jitsu player from the 1990s called Holeta, who often made use of this method to take people over. I remember he came to the Henzo Gracie Academy in the mid-1990s and impressed everyone with his ability to use this sweep and particularly time it on his opponent's vulnerable second step. Let's have a look at it now.
Okay, we know now that when an opponent goes to stand up, they have to form some kind of an effective base with their hands on your upper body. And from there, they typically take a step up one. That creates a situation where the head moves offline, and then when they go to take the second step, the head must move a second time offline, and they're up to their feet, okay? So we need to take advantage of this critical movement of the head and disturb our opponent's balance. What we're going to do is we're going to start off by taking double cuff grips on our training partner. So I'm going to take my 2 hands and put them on top of my training partner's 2 hands. Now, it's best if you can break your opponent's grip by taking your hand over his hand and pushing the hands down the body. That's the preferred situation. I want his hands as close to my belt as possible, with my hands on top of his hands holding the sleeve cuffs. Please bear in mind that it is illegal and rather hazardous for you to start putting fingers inside your opponent's sleeve cuffs. This is not a good thing. So make sure always we grip with 4 fingers on the outside of our training partner's sleeve cuffs, just like so, and your hands on top of his hands. The ideal situation is one where you have both of his hands close to your belt. Sometimes you cannot get the ideal situation. It's okay. Just have the hands on top of his. That's the main thing, okay? But if you do get the ability to pop the grip off and keep the hands close to the belt, that will facilitate the movement we're about to look at. Now, as our opponent goes to stand up, we let him take the first step. And this is where things get interesting. I'm going to put weight over my opponent's hips by bringing my feet down towards the floor. That loads weight onto my opponent's hips and makes his second step even more vulnerable than it would otherwise be. Now, in slow motion, my training partner is going to go up to the second step. As that occurs, I'm going to take my 2 knees inside and pinch my 2 legs together around his upper body. I'm going to take my training partner's 2 hands and bring them over my shoulders. You can do it straight over the shoulders or you can flare. That's your choice. They're both highly effective. As a general rule, Flaring the arms will create a stronger off balance, but it's more difficult to do on a physically strong opponent. So whether you bring the hands narrow or wide, the main thing is that the hands be up by your shoulder line. You don't want the hands down by the hips. Okay? So we bring the hands forward like so. Then from here, as my training partner takes that second step, I'm going to extend my two legs so that his weight goes forward and his hands start coming down towards the mat. Now in one motion, I'm going to bring the hands back and around, and I'm going to push off my lower back and bring myself up into the mounted position. As always, when we hit a beautiful sweep from closed guard, it has the added benefit of finishing in the mounted position. This stands in contrast to situations from open guard. Guys standing over me. Most open guard sweeps don't result in a clean transition to the mount because my hips are below his hips. So if I hit, for example, a tripod sweep, when I come up, I just change positions. I go into my opponent's guard. But when you sweep from a closed guard, because your hips are on top of your opponent's hips, you end up in the mounted position. That's one of the great benefits of closed guard situations. When you complete a sweep, typically you're mounted, as opposed to just ending up in top position inside your opponent's guard. So let's have a look at this again. From a situation where my training partner is here in my closed guard. We're going to start by getting our hands on top of his hands. Best of all is where you're able to physically pop his lead hand off and bring the two hands down towards the belt. Okay? It's not impossible. If the hand stays up here, this can be done too, but it's a little better if you control the hands and have the grips broken. Now, from here, as my opponent goes to stand, we're going to wait for that vulnerable second step. As we see that, we're going to start that action of breaking our training partner's balance forward. As my legs extend, my lower back starts to come up off the ground, and we take our opponent's hands in behind us, and as a result, we end up with a nice sweep over into mounted position. Please bear in mind that it's important that you sweep your opponent over one of your shoulders and not directly overhead. Okay, there's a safety reason for this, so your opponent doesn't fall forward and headbutt you, and it also makes for a much easier transition. I'm going to demonstrate the move solo one time so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. If I start off in this position here, and I draw my training partner forward, I bring my knees to my chest, and I extend my two legs. In this position, my lower back comes up off the ground. It's the momentum of my two legs moving forward, which takes my lower back up off the floor. Then as I pressure the two hands around, my legs split and I go over one shoulder. I do not go directly over my own head. I choose a right or a left shoulder, and we do a backward shoulder roll to take top position. Okay? So once again, from a situation where my training partner goes to stand up in my closed guard, we get an initial control of our training partner's sleeve cuffs, and then as he comes up, we bring everything forward. Notice how important it is, coming up, for me to use the extension of my two legs. My knees go in front of the armpits. If my knees are behind the armpits, it's hard for me to bring them forward. So it's important that my knees come in front. Once the knees come in front, the extension of my two legs, combined with the extension of his arms, creates a situation where he goes forward onto his tippy toes. Then from here, he can only try to put his hands on the mat. That's what we're looking for. As my hips rise, we pull his base of support away and take him over. That's why it's so important you have the hands on top. So as he reaches for the floor, you just take away the two hands and over she goes. There's a sense in which what you're doing with this move is a back roll where you connect his body to yours. Okay, if you perform a back roll and he's connected to you, he's going to roll with you. And as a result, you get a very clean sweep. One more time. My training partner is in my closed guard. I get control of the two sleeve cuffs, and as always from here, there's often some hand fighting where we bring the hands in and break away the grips. Okay, it can be done if he's connected to you, but it's a little easier when the hands are open like so. As he goes to stand up, from here, we bring our two knees in front. My legs are strongly connected to him, and back down. And the first movement is this with the hands. Now we extend and over we go into top position. Using this simple method based around timing and the vulnerable second step, when our opponent goes to stand up in our closed guard, we can hit a beautiful overhead sweep that scores you 2 points for the sweep and 4 points for the mounted position.